Honor by Timothy Moore. Chapter 1. Shadows in the Alley. The cold wasn't just a feeling anymore. It was a living thing. It crept along Max's skin, sank into his bones, wrapped around his chest like iron bands. But so was he. He pulled his jacket tighter, a thin, frayed thing that barely deserved the name, and tucked deeper into the shelter of the rusted dumpster. The alley swallowed him whole. Above, the stars were gone, swallowed by a heavy lid of clouds. The night pressed against the city with suffocating weight, leaving broken street lights to blink against the darkness like weak, drying eyes. Somewhere far off, sirens screamed, sharp, urgent, then faded into nothing. Max didn't move. Movement meant noise. Noise meant Rico. His stomach twisted itself into knots that had long passed hunger. Hunger he could live with. It was the loneliness that gnawed at him the hardest. The feeling that he was the only spark left in a city built of ash. He pressed his forehead against the cold metal of the dumpster, breathing slow, shallow breaths. Every sense was tuned to the night. The rattling of a loose window pane, the slap of plastic against pavement, the hum of something broken deep beneath the streets. And then a laugh, not a kind one. It sliced through the silence like a blade. Max's blood turned to ice. "Hey, check behind the shop," Rico's voice, oily and sharp, slithered through the air. "Maybe our little alley rat's hiding there again." Another laugh, this one high and grating. Jaden. Max squeezed his eyes shut. Tank would be with them too. Tank, who sometimes hesitated, who sometimes remembered what it meant to have a conscience. "Come on, Rico." Tank's voice drifted through the darkness, low and uncertain. "Just leave him." For one brief, fleeting second, Max felt the faintest brush of gratitude. Rico's reply came like a slap. "You going soft? This street is ours." Max needs to remember he is nothing. Footsteps scraped closer, boots against broken concrete. Max held his breath. He didn't think about running. Running would be a beacon. He didn't think about fighting. Fighting would leave him broken again. He thought about surviving. And for Max, surviving wasn't about fighting back. It was about enduring. He became a statue, another forgotten piece of the alley, willing himself invisible. Long minutes passed. Then, fading footsteps. Their voices blurred into the distance, swallowed by the hungry silence of the sleeping city. Max exhaled so softly it barely stirred the air. His body ached from the strain of staying so small, so still. But he didn't move yet. He waited, counting heartbeats until he was sure. Only then did he uncurl himself from the shadow. The city lay before him, a place of rust and ruin, of cold hands and colder hearts. But Max knew its rhythm, knew how to ghost between the cracks, knew how to live where no one wanted to look. He moved silently, slipping through the veins of the city until he found it. The dojo, a small square building tucked between crumbling storefronts. Its large front windows spilling golden light onto the sidewalk like a promise. Max crouched below the windowsill and peered in. Inside, it was another world. Students in clean white uniforms moved together, punches snapping, feet whispering over polished wood. The air looked warm inside, thick with focus, with discipline, with something Max couldn't name, but felt down to the marrow of his bones. At the center of it all, Sensei Daigon, tall, calm, silver-haired and sharp-eyed. He moved through the rows like a current through the water, adjusting a stance here, offering a soft correction there. Not with anger, not with judgment, with expectation. Max's fingers twitched. He mimicked the student's movements, clumsily and carefully, muscles straining against memory and hope. He watched enough now to know some of the patterns, to imagine just for a moment that he belonged among them, that he wasn't just surviving, that he was fighting. His reflections shimmered faintly in the glass, a shadow watching a dream. And then Sensei Daigon turned, their eyes locked. Max's breath caught, not because he was afraid of being dragged inside, but because in that one piercing look, Max felt something he hadn't felt in a very, very long time. Seen. And being seen was dangerous. Before he could think, Max bolted, feet pounding against the broken pavement, blood roaring in his ears. He didn't stop until the city swallowed him again, until he collapsed behind the familiar cold of the dumpster. He curled into himself, pulling his threadbare blanket tight, shrinking back into the place where the world couldn't touch him. Above, snow began to fall, soft, relentless, whispering against the steel and stone. Max watched a single flake melt against the torn fabric of his sleeve. Someday, he whispered. And even though he didn't finish the sentence, even though the cold pressed tighter and the night grew heavier, that tiny ember deep inside him refused to go out. Max closed his eyes and dreamed of something more. Chapter 2. Small Acts of Kindness. Morning arrived not with warmth, but with light. A pale, reluctant glow that crept over the rooftops like it wasn't sure it wanted to touch this part of the city. Garrison Street looked softer in that half-light, its broken pavement washed in gold, as if the neighborhood was trying to pretend it wasn't held together by rust and desperation. Max stirred beneath his blanket, his body stiff with cold. He blinked slowly, eyes adjusting to the icy dawn. The valley smelled of damp cardboard and motor oil. But it was familiar, and familiar was safe. He sat up, wincing as his muscles protested. Ice had crusted along the edge of the blanket where it had touched the ground. His breath clouded in front of him, a ghost that vanished as quickly as it appeared. He stretched out his legs and rubbed his arms to fight off the chill, and then carefully folded the blanket and slid it behind the crates. It wasn't much, but it was his secret, his shelter, his fragile corner of the world. He dusted snow from his hair and shoulders, then pulled up the hood of his jacket, now stiff from moisture and fraying at the seams. As he stepped out onto the street, the city blinked back to life in fits and starts. A distant bus rumbled by, belching smoke, doors slammed, a dog barked somewhere behind a chain-link fence. The world was waking up. Max moved quietly, keeping to the edges, head down. The city didn't notice him passing by. It never had, and part of him was terrified it never would. He passed the fogged window of the sandwich shop and paused without meaning to. The smell hit him like a punch. Warm bread, eggs, and something sweet baking in the oven. It curled into his senses, making his stomach clench with longing. His fingers twitched at his sides, and for a moment, he pressed his forehead lightly to the cold glass. Inside, John, the shop owner, was slicing a loaf of bread with practiced ease. His thick forearms moving with purpose, and his face bore the calm focus of someone who knew exactly where he belonged in the world. He wore a plain apron over a flannel shirt, and his graying beard twitched when he muttered something to the girl behind him, Emma. Max didn't mean to watch her. It just happened. She had her back turned, laughing at something her father said, and the sound, light and effortless, cut through the morning like a match in a cave. Her blonde hair shimmered as she turned, catching the glow from the pendant lights above the counter. Then her eyes lifted, and she saw him. Max jerked back instinctively, heart jumping. Their eyes had met for barely a second, and it seemed like forever. Like she had reached through the glass and touched something raw inside of him. He ducked his head, cheeks burning, and turned away. He didn't see her frown or the way she stepped toward the counter, as if she might come after him. Max's boots crunched against salt and ice as he hurried down the block, past graffiti-covered brick and shuttered storefronts. The cold wind nipped at his cheeks, but he didn't stop until he saw the steps of the church up ahead. Pastor Mike was already outside, just like always. He stood tall despite his thin frame, a weathered denim coat stretched over his lanky build, scarf tucked tightly beneath his collar. He moved methodically, setting out a wooden folding table in front of the stone church entrance. On the table, he arranged a plate of muffins, 2 thermoses of cocoa, and a cardboard box labeled "Free, take what you need." "Morning, Max," Mike called out, his voice warm and easy like sunlight through stained glass. Max hesitated. He always did. Even now, after weeks of passing by this exact table, after the kind smiles and quiet nods, Max's body still recoiled at the idea of kindness. It felt dangerous, like a door with a trap behind it. But there was something about Pastor Mike, the way he never pushed, never judged. It chipped away at the fear, one day at a time. "Hey," Max said quietly, approaching the table. Mike reached into his coat and pulled out a foam cup, pouring the cocoa. Hot cocoa, no tricks, no sermon unless you ask me for one. Max took the cup with both hands, fingers trembling from the cold. The warmth nearly made him gasp. It soaked into his palms and sent little jolts of life up his arms. "Thanks," he mumbled. Mike gave a short nod and leaned against the railing, looking out at the street. "I saw you practicing in the alley yesterday." Max froze. Mike didn't look at him. "Your stances are getting sharper. You've got good instincts." Max stared down at the steam rising from his cup. "I'm not training. Not really." "No?" Mike turned toward him, eyes kind beneath bushy brows. "Could have fooled me. I've seen kids copy TV movies before, but that wasn't what you were doing." Max shrugged, uncomfortable. "I just watch sometimes through the window." "The dojo?" A nod. "Since I Dagon's a good man," Mike said. "Tough, but fair. You thinking about going in?" Max didn't answer. He just sipped the cocoa and let the heat calm the storm in his chest. Mike didn't press. Instead, he reached into a paper bag behind the table and pulled out 2 wrapped sandwiches. "Here, turkey and cheese. One for now, one for later." Max's eyes widened. "I can't take both." "Yes, you can." Max hesitated, then took the sandwiches slowly, like they might vanish. He tucked one carefully into his coat. "I'll pay you back someday." Mike's smile deepened. "Just pay it forward." Max was about to reply when a familiar voice cut through the morning. "Well, well, well." Max's stomach dropped. Rico. He turned slowly to see the trio emerging from the alley beside the church. Rico walked in front, hands shoved deep in his hoodie pockets, eyes gleaming with malice delight. Jaden flanked him, grinning. Tank lagged a few steps behind, his face unreadable. "You getting handouts now, Max?" Rico sneered. "What, begging outside the church like some mutt?" Mike stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "That's enough." Rico ignored him. "Looks like you finally found yourself a sugar daddy, huh?" Max didn't speak. He just clutched the sandwich tighter. Rico's smile faded. "Give it here." Mike started forward, but Max held up a hand, small, defiant. "It's mine." Rico's eyes flared. In 2 steps, he was in Max's face, ripping the sandwich from his hand. "You don't get to have anything," he hissed. "Not after the way you look at us like you're better, like you're different." Max stared up at him, jaw clenched. He said nothing. Jaden swiped the cocoa from his other hand and dumped it onto the ground. The hot liquid steamed against the ice, hissing softly as it vanished. "You're nothing," Rico whispered. "And nothing stays nothing." Then they were gone. Mike moved beside Max quickly. "Are you all right?" Max nodded, even though he wasn't. Even though every muscle in his body was tight and burning with shame. He turned away, ready to disappear again. But someone was walking toward him from across the street. Emma. She held a brown paper bag, her breath rising in soft clouds. Her eyes met Max's, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. "I saw what happened," she said quietly. Max looked down, cheeks hot. Emma stepped closer, holding out the bag. "This is yours." Max stared. "Why?" "Because no one should get hurt for accepting kindness," she smiled gently. "And because I don't like bullies." He hesitated and then took it with trembling fingers. "Thank you," he whispered. She tilted her head. "You should come to the dojo sometime. I mean it." Max opened his mouth, then closed it again. Too many emotions. Too many walls. Emma didn't press. She just gave a small, warm smile and turned back towards the shop. Max watched her walk away. And for the second time that morning, he felt it. A flicker of something he barely recognized. Hope. Chapter 3. Broken Roads. Max sat alone beneath the rusting fire escape behind the church. Knees drawn up to his chest, arms wrapped tightly around them. A pale beam of winter light slipped between the buildings, landing across the bruises on his hands and the dirt smudges on his sleeves of his jacket. He didn't feel it, not the cold, not the wind, not even the ache in his stomach. Right now, he only felt the silence. Not the good kind, not the kind that comes after laughter or during peaceful sleep. This silence was different, heavily charged, pressed in. It lived in his lungs and behind his eyes and between the beats of his heart. He stared at the ground, lost inside himself, memories swirling behind his eyes like shadows underwater. Before everything fell apart, mornings used to feel warm. His mother would sing while making breakfast, off-key, cheerfully humming that filled the little apartment like sunlight. The smell of pancakes would drift into his room and nudge him awake. He used to hate getting up early. Now he missed it so much it hurt. He remembered the way his father's laugh shook the kitchen table, how Max used to try to mimic it, but always ended up sounding like he was choking. He remembered his mom pulling him into a hug, warm and safe and unbreakable. He remembered thinking the world was good. The memory of that night was sharper than he wanted it to be. Rain slickened the streets. He had leaned his forehead against the back seat window, tracing raindrops with his finger. Too tired to stay awake. Too peaceful to know that everything was about to end. The truck had come out of nowhere. The screech of tires, the horrible twisting crunch of metal, his mother's screams, and then darkness. He woke up to flashing lights and voices calling his name. He remembered the weight of a stranger's coat draped over his shoulders, the way their hands were gentle and careful but unfamiliar. He remembered screaming for his parents and being told they were gone. Just like that. One word. Gone. From that moment, nothing had been the same. He bounced between foster homes that didn't want him, people who smiled in front of social workers and then turned cold behind closed doors. Places where the air was filled with yelling and slamming doors and kids who learned to survive by becoming invisible, until he stopped hoping. One night, he slipped through a window and did not stop running. Max blinked back to the present, the memory fading into the cold that surrounded him now. He flexed his hands and winced. The bruises from his last encounter with Rico still throbbed, but they didn't matter. Not really. He learned to live with pain. What he hadn't learned was how to live without a place to belong. He rubbed his face hard with the sleeves of his jacket, trying to chase away the sting in his eyes. Then he pulled the tattered blanket tighter around his body and leaned his head back against the brick wall. "I'm still here," he whispered to no one. "Why am I still here?" The alley didn't answer. It never did. But in his heart, a tiny ember refused to go out. He thought of Emma's eyes when she handed him that sandwich. She hadn't looked at him like he was pathetic. She hadn't even looked at him like he was broken. She looked at him like he mattered. And that, just that, was enough to keep him from disappearing.
Emma's journal. Dear future Emma, you saw him again today. Max. He didn't notice you. He never does. Sitting there in that dark alley across from the shop, knees tight against his chest, hiding behind that old worn-out jacket, like he's trying so hard to vanish from everyone's sight. He looked painfully small, Emma. Not just small physically, but small in the saddest way imaginable, like the weight of the whole world is slowly crushing him, pressing him smaller and smaller, making him fade. You almost ran over to him, didn't you? You wanted nothing more than to sit beside him, to let him know he wasn't alone, to say something, anything, but you held yourself back. What would you even say to someone like Max? Sorry life decided to chew you up and leave you behind? You know there aren't any words that could ever fix that. This neighborhood is cruel, Emma. It quietly swallows people whole, slowly breaking them down. One lost job, one overdue bill, one hopeless fight at a time. And then just like that, they're gone. They stop caring, stop trying, stop believing that life could ever offer anything more. You feel it, don't you? Max is fighting so hard against that darkness. Life is daring him to surrender, to stop believing in himself. But somehow, miraculously, he doesn't. He's still here, Emma, still showing up every single day, surviving even when it seems impossible. You can't help but watch him sometimes. Cleaning the windows or restocking shelves, you look up and there he is, practicing karate in the shadows, fighting so fiercely for strength no one else seems willing to give him. And the way he looks at Sensei Daigon, it breaks your heart. He stares like he's seeing a life he desperately wants but is too afraid to believe he could ever have. But he deserves it, Emma. He deserves warmth, real food, clean clothes, and people who genuinely care. He deserves hugs filled with comfort, not pity. He deserves so much more than cold nights, empty stomachs, and that hateful gang constantly tormenting him. That's what hurts you the most, isn't it? Max doesn't believe he deserves better, but you do. God, you believe it with every fiber in your heart. And if Rico ever hurts Max again, promise yourself you'll scream so loud that everyone will finally hear you. Make them listen, Emma. Max isn't invisible. He's not Charity. He's a real boy with messy hair, eyes full of quiet sadness, and a heart bigger and kinder than he ever lets anyone see. And maybe it's silly, but sometimes you wonder, does he ever think of you? Not romantically, but does he notice the little things? Does he realize you're the one adding extra turkey to his sandwiches? Did he know it was you who left those gloves outside his door when the weather turned freezing cold? Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But remember this, Emma. Never ever give up on him, because someone has to believe in the forgotten, the lost, the ones everyone else overlooks. You choose Max. Don't ever forget why. Love, Emma.
Chapter 4. Shadows of Fear and Light. The sun slipped behind the crooked rooftops like it was too scared to stay. Shadows flooded the narrow streets, clinging to broken fences and sagging porches like they were claiming the city inch by inch. Max stood at the edge of the alley behind the church, clutching his blanket around his shoulders. His shoes were falling apart. The broken lace on the one dragged like a wounded limb when he walked. Tonight, everything felt heavier. He crouched low, listening, waiting. Then he heard it, the laugh, Rico's laugh. It wasn't just cruel, it was desperate. Max stiffened. He pressed into the wall, heart pounding against his ribs. The night around him seemed to lean in closer, holding its breath. Footsteps. 3 sets. Max heard Rico's voice, slick and sharp. Saw that new bag Maxie's got. Bet he thinks he's something now. Jaden snickered, walking around like he's untouchable. Tank's voice came slower, heavier. Man, just leave it. He's not bothering anyone. For a moment, there was hesitation, a fracture in the darkness. Max dared to breathe. But Rico's anger flared, covering that crack. He makes people look at us different, like we're the ones wasting our lives. Max stayed still, but inside, the words hit harder than any punches. Rico wasn't just angry. He was scared. Because every time Max got back up, Rico's grip on this broken world seemed to slip a little bit more. The footsteps faded, swallowed by the empty street. Max waited until the silence was thick enough to be trusted, then peeled himself away from the wall. The cold bit at his fingers and toes, but it didn't matter. He had somewhere to be. Max moved through the city's skeleton, past boarded up shops and flickering signs until he saw it. The dojo. The windows glowed against the night, warm and steady. Max crouched low, peeking through the glass. Inside, the students moved in crisp, powerful lines. Their punches cracked the air. Their feet whispered fierce promises against the polished wood. And at the center of it all stood Sensei Daigon, solid and unshakable. He moved between the students, his voice calm, his correction sharp but kind. Max felt the hunger rise, but not for food. For this, for belonging. He pressed his fingertips to the cold glass. Imagine what it would feel like to go inside, to bow, to stand tall. But a voice behind him shattered the moment. You're always watching. Max spun, heart leaping into his throat. Emma stood there, hands tucked into the pockets of a worn hoodie, her braid draped over one shoulder. She wasn't laughing at him. She wasn't mocking. She just saw him. I wasn't, Max started. Emma shrugged. It's okay. I watch too sometimes. He frowned. You? Yeah, she said. Sometimes I stand outside the bakery and pretend my mom never left. Pretend there's still something whole inside that place. The weight of her words settled between them, raw and real. Emma stepped closer, standing shoulder to shoulder with him. Together they looked through the window at a world that didn't yet belong to them, but maybe, just maybe, could. "He knows you're there," Emma said softly. Max's throat tightened. "Sensei Dagon?" "Yeah, he watches for you. He's waiting." Max turned his face back to the window, blinking hard. "I don't think I'm ready," he whispered. Emma's smile was small but fierce. "No one ever is." She turned and walked into the misty dark without waiting for a response, her figure swallowed by the gold and gray of the city. Max stayed a moment longer. He wasn't used to being seen. He wasn't sure yet if it was a gift or a danger. Inside the dojo, the students bowed. Outside, Max lowered his head too, a silent promise to himself. Not tonight, but soon. Soon he would walk through that door. He wouldn't be just a shadow anymore. He would be real.
Emma's Journal, Chapter 4. Dear future Emma, it's always colder at night, isn't it? Not just the air, the whole feeling of this place shifts. It's like the neighborhood holds its breath when the sun goes down, waiting nervously for something to break. And you know exactly what it is, even if you hate admitting it. It's Max. You saw him again tonight, outside the dojo, standing in the shadows like he always does, fingertips just barely brushing against the glass, like he's afraid that if he presses even a little harder, everything will shatter, and he'll fall into a world he doesn't believe he deserves. But he does, Emma. God, he deserves it so much. You wish more than anything that Max could see himself through your eyes. Just once, you wish he could understand how incredibly worthy he is of warmth, kindness, and belonging. You didn't plan to talk to him tonight, but there he was as you walked by, and suddenly words just spilled out. And he looked so surprised, Emma, as if nobody had spoken to him all day. When he turned around, your heart hurt. He looked exhausted, not just from cold or hunger, but like he was weighed down by something too heavy, something he's carried alone for too long, something constantly whispering to him that he doesn't belong. But he does belong, Emma. You wanted to grab his hand and drag him inside, yelling to the world, "Look at him, he matters, he belongs here," but you knew you couldn't, not yet. He wasn't ready. So instead, you stood there quietly beside him, looking in through the window, feeling for one brief moment like maybe you weren't so different after all. Just two kids desperately hoping to find a place where pretending isn't necessary anymore. Max holds everything inside, convinced that showing emotion makes him weak. But he's wrong, Emma. Carrying all that pain and still standing tall, that's true strength. You know it, even if he doesn't yet. And then there's Rico, who thrives on fear like it's his first language. Rico hates Max, not for turf or pride, but because Max still has a spark inside him, a light that Rico desperately wants to extinguish. You hate Rico for that, Emma. You hate him deeply. You're scared for Max, so scared it makes your chest ache, but you're hopeful too. Tonight, Max didn't run away. He didn't hide. He stood his ground, quietly, bravely, watching, waiting. That's the first step, Emma. He's closer than he thinks. And when he finally walks through that door, promise yourself you'll be there, not just to witness it, but to remind him he was never alone. Not ever. Hold on to that, Emma. Love, Emma.
Chapter 5. Finding Honor. The street was quiet again. Too quiet. Max's hands trembled slightly as he clutched the sandwich Pastor Mike had left for him behind the church. The bread was still warm, soft, comforting, and it made his chest ache. Not because he was hungry, but because it felt like someone had remembered him. That was harder to accept than hunger. He moved through the narrow back street to the neighborhood. Each step echoed with the memories of cold nights, harsh voices, and the pounding rhythm of running feet. Tonight, he didn't run. Not yet. He wasn't sure why. Something had shifted. Maybe it had started when Emma stood beside him outside the dojo. Maybe it had started long before that, when he'd first watched the students through the glass and thought, what if? Now, As he turned the corner, the dojo stood in front of him again. The building seemed to hum with energy, glowing against the darkness like a promise. The windows spilled golden light across the cracked sidewalk, and aside he saw students bowing in unison. Everything about it felt right, whole, like the pieces of the world inside that room had been put back together in a way Max had forgotten was possible. He watched from across the street, heart hammering in his chest. "You don't belong," a voice in his head whispered. And then quieter, almost too quiet to hear, came Emma's voice. "No one's ever ready, and that's okay." Max took a breath. Then he crossed the street. Each step felt heavier than the last, like he was dragging each fear he'd ever had behind him. He stopped just outside the door, fingers twitching at his sides. His reflection stared back at him in the glass. Dirty jacket, frayed jeans, wide, uncertain eyes. He didn't look like the others. He didn't feel like them. But something inside him whispered, "Go." He reached out, pushed the door open, and stepped into the light. The warmth hit him immediately, not just from the heaters overhead, but from the atmosphere, the energy, the respect that pulsed through the air like a drumbeat. The polished floor shone under his shoes, and the soft slap of feet and deep breathing of the students filled the room with life. A dozen pairs of eyes turned towards him. Max froze. He wanted to disappear, to turn around and melt into the shadows. But then a voice, calm, steady, cut through the room. "You finally came." Sensei Daigon stepped forward. Up close, he looked even taller than Max remembered. His hair was silver, pulled neatly back, and his face was lined with years of experience. But it was his eyes that made Max stop. They were steady, warm, like they saw right through him. But they didn't flinch at what they found. "I've seen you outside," the sensei said softly, "every night." Max nodded, throat tight. "I wasn't sure I was allowed," he whispered. "You are," Sensei Daigon said. "You always were." The words didn't erase the fear clawing at Max's chest, but they built something stronger just underneath it. Sensei instructed one of the students to get a used gi from the back room. Moments later, the student offered Max a soft, folded gi. He stared at it, unsure. I don't have money," he said quickly, "or anything to offer." "You have something," the sensei replied. "You have your story. You have your spirit. That's enough." Max held the uniform in his hands, still stunned. "Go, change. Let's begin." 10 minutes later, Max stood at the back of the line, barefoot, dressed in the crisp white gi. It hung a little loose from his frame, but for the first time in a long time, he did not feel small. He felt like he belonged. The class moved through basic stances. Max watched, mimicked, stumbled, corrected. Sensei Daigon moved through the rows, adjusting forms, nodding quietly. When he reached Max, he didn't scold or question. He simply said, "Good. You already listen with your whole body. That is rare." Max flushed. For the first time in what felt like forever, someone wasn't telling him what he lacked. They were telling him what he had. The class ended with bows and quiet words of gratitude. Max remained kneeling on the mat, heart still racing. Sensei Daigon sat beside him. "Why are you here, Max?" The question caught him off guard. He looked down at his hands. "Because I'm tired of being scared," he said. "Because I want to feel strong again. Because I don't want to be forgotten." The sensei nodded. "Then you have already begun," he said. "Honor is not something given. It is chosen. It begins when you decide who you want to be, no matter what the world tells you." Max looked at the word painted boldly across the wall. Honor. He swallowed hard. "I want to be someone who matters," he said quietly. "You already are," Sensei Daigon said. And in that moment, Max believed him. Later that night, Max stepped outside. The cold bit at his cheeks, but he barely noticed. He had done it. He had stepped through the door. Across the street, Emma leaned against the sandwich shop's front window, arms crossed, pretending not to wait. When their eyes met, she smiled. Max smiled back. For the first time, he didn't feel like a ghost looking in. He felt seen.
Dear future Emma, he did it. He actually did it. Max walked into the dojo tonight like he belonged there, even though you know his heart must have been racing out of control. You've never seen anyone look so scared yet so incredibly brave all at once. He looked different tonight, didn't he? Not just because he finally wore a gi, which honestly looked adorable on him even if it was way too big. It was more than that. It was something in how he stood. Like for the first time ever, he thought maybe, just maybe, he was more than nothing. You almost cried, didn't you? Standing outside the shop, pretending to clean the windows, you couldn't stop watching him. There he was, at the back of the class, carefully copying every move, trying desperately not to mess up. And when the sensei walked by and nodded at him, Max's face, it lit up, Emma. You'll never forget how his eyes sparkled in that tiny moment, like something finally told him he was good enough. And yeah, it sounds cheesy, but it wasn't cheesy. It was beautiful. Max watches from the shadows, always waits, always hides. But tonight he stepped forward. He put himself out there. He showed himself to the world. You've never felt prouder of anyone in your entire life. But there's a part of you that's terrified, isn't there? Because the brighter Max shines, the more Rico's going to notice. Rico won't like that. Because the brighter Max shines, the more Rico's going to notice. Rico won't like this new Max, not one bit. But you don't care. Because you know exactly who Max is. You know the fire burning quietly inside him. You know the way he sees the world. Not with bitterness or anger, but with this gentle hope, as if he's waiting for something good to finally happen. And tonight he believed it. Tonight he stepped through that door. In that one courageous step, everything changed. For Max, for you, for everyone. Never forget tonight, Emma. Hold it close. Love, Emma.
Chapter 6. First Steps. The sky was still dark when Max opened his eyes. The blanket beneath him was damp with cold, pressed against the cracked pavement behind the dumpsters where he had curled up the night before. His bones ached. His breath fogged the air. Somewhere in the distance, a garbage truck clanged and rumbled to life. Max sat up slowly, brushing frost from his jacket sleeve. His fingers were stiff. The bruises on his ribs had dulled into something more like a memory now, but every movement reminded him of where he came from, of what he still didn't have. He hadn't eaten since yesterday morning, but hunger wasn't what pulled him up this time. It was something else, the dojo. The way it had felt to move, to focus, to breathe and stand tall with other students beside him. It had only been one night, one class, but it had touched something deep in him. Something he hadn't realized was still alive. Hope. He stood, folded the blanket carefully, and hid it again beneath the crates. His feet whispered over the frost-slickened pavement as he began to move through the kata Sensei Daigon had taught him. Slowly at first, unsure, clumsy, but then again and again. Punch, breathe, step, turn. His body warmed as he moved. His thoughts quieted. The chill lost its bite. No one was watching him, but for the first time in a long time, Max wasn't doing this for anyone else. He was doing it for himself. He didn't look like much yet, but when he moved, he felt something almost forgotten. Pride. That afternoon, he returned to the dojo. He didn't hesitate this time. The students were already lined up on the mat, chatting quietly and stretching. Max stepped through the door and bowed, heart pounding. But the anxiety that had gripped him before was quieter now. Still there, but manageable. Like a wound that had started to scar over. And that's when he saw her. Emma stood near the front, pulling her brown belt tight with practiced hands. Her gi was crisp and clean, her movements graceful, even when still. Her hair was pulled back into a braid again, and the moment her eyes found Max, she smiled. "You came back," she said. Max nodded. "I said I would." "You remember the form we practiced?" "I think so." Emma's eyes sparkled. "Good, because you're my partner today." Before Max could respond, Sensei Daigon called them to bow in. The class moved through drills with rhythm and energy. Max followed Emma's lead, trying to match her pace. She was strong, stronger than anyone Max had seen his age, but there was a softness to her too, a patience. She didn't correct him like a teacher or talk down to him like he was some lost cause. She trained beside him like he belonged there, like they were equals. And that feeling, it made Max's chest ache with something he wasn't used to, pride. They moved through the kata together. Max stumbled once and grunted, frustrated. Emma leaned in and whispered, "You're doing fine. Your feet just want to rush ahead of your heart. Slow them down." He tried again, slower, smoother. Sensei Daigon passed behind them and gave a quiet nod. As they moved through the kata together, Max stumbled again, frustration biting at him. But Emma didn't sigh or roll her eyes like other kids might have. Instead, she simply adjusted her stance beside him. Patient, calm, steady. Max caught a glimpse of her smile out of the corner of his eye. Not mocking, not pitying, just there. Solid as a stone you could build on. And for the first time in as long as he could remember, Max felt something unfamiliar settle deep inside his chest. Safety. Not the kind you had to fight for, the kind someone offered you freely, expecting nothing in return. Max adjusted his feet and tried again. This time, his movements were smoother. Not perfect, but better. And all because, somehow, knowing Emma was there made the whole world seem a little less sharp. Max couldn't help it. He smiled. At the end of the class, as the students bowed to the sensei and each other, Max stayed kneeling on the mat a little longer. He watched the word painted on the wall, honor, and felt it differently now. It wasn't just a decoration. It was a question. And maybe a direction. After class, Emma walked beside him to the edge of the sidewalk. She was quiet at first, then asked, "Do you ever think about testing, like for belts?" "I don't even think about what I'm eating tomorrow," Max said with a dry smile. "Belts feel like something for people who already belong." She stopped walking and turned to him. "You do belong. You walked in. You bowed. You showed up. That's what matters." Max looked at her, surprised by the conviction in her voice. "You really believe that?" he asked. "I know it," she said. And in her eyes, he saw something that made his chest ache again. She wasn't just trying to be kind. She believed in him. That night, Max returned to the alley. The wind had picked up, and the blanket didn't offer much warmth. He curled into himself, eyes fixed on the sliver of stars above the rooftops, and whispered the same words he always did before sleep. "I'm still here." But this time, he added something else. "Maybe I'm not done yet." The next morning, Max didn't sleep well. The cold crept in and stayed. He was awake before the sun, bones aching, joints stiff. He stood slowly and stretched the soreness from his limbs, then rubbed his arms and looked down the alleyway. He didn't expect to see anyone, so when he heard footsteps, he startled. Pastor Mike stood at the entrance of the alley, hands in his coat pockets, scarf fluttering in the breeze. "Hey, Max," he said gently. "Didn't mean to scare you." Max nodded, unsure of what to say. Mike took a few steps closer. "I was wondering if you could help me this morning. There's a room in the church I've been meaning to clean out. Storage mostly. Figured you might be able to lend a hand." Max hesitated. "Why me?" Mike smiled softly. "Because you're up early, and because I trust you." The room was small and dusty, filled with old hymnals, broken chairs, and boxes labeled Easter 2013. Max worked alongside Pastor Mike in silence at first, stacking, sweeping, wiping down surfaces. The light through the stained glass window painted the floor in soft colors. Eventually, Mike broke the quiet. "You know," he said, "when I was your age, I really didn't understand what honor meant. I thought it was all about medals, titles, winning." Max glanced at him. "But it's not," Mike continued. "Not really. It's about the quiet choices, how you treat people when no one's watching, how you carry yourself when you have nothing. Honor shows up when you have every reason to give up, and you don't." Max looked down at his hands. "But what if you've already given up for a long time?" "Then getting up again is the most honorable thing you can do," Mike said. Max swallowed, throat tight. Mike placed a folded blanket on the freshly cleaned cot in the corner of the room. "You've been sleeping out there too long, Max. I see kids on the street every day, and I worry about every single one of them. But you," he paused, "there's something in you, something that hasn't been broken, even when the world tried to." Max didn't speak. He didn't know how to. Mike stepped aside and gestured to the room. "This was always meant to be temporary," he said, "but it's yours, if you want it. You don't owe me anything, no rent, no chores. Just rest." Max stared at the bed like it was a trick. "I didn't do anything to deserve this," he whispered. Mike smiled, eyes warm. That's not how grace works. Max's voice cracked. Thank you. You don't need to thank me, Mike said. You just need to believe that you're worth being cared for. And in that moment, Max wasn't just cold or hungry or tired. He was something else entirely. Seen, safe, home.
Dear future Emma, today Max walked into class like he belonged, not timidly, not uncertain, like someone who finally knew exactly where he was going. It might seem like a tiny thing, but for Max, it's everything. You remember your own first day here, don't you? You were just a kid, so hurt, so angry, feeling completely alone. You didn't have any words for your pain back then, so you spoke through your movements. Every kata was your voice, every strike a silent scream, asking why she left, what you had done wrong. And little by little the answers came, not in words but through motion, through rhythm, through stillness. This is how you found yourself. And Max is now finding his way too. Something changed in him today. You saw it clearly, focused, calm, determined, not trying to prove something to anyone else, but because he's finally starting to believe he belongs here and that he deserves this. After class, you talked about real things, about trust, about pain, things nobody else in your lives truly understand. And Emma, you told him something you've never shared with anyone else. And Max? He didn't run away. He listened. He stayed. He made you feel for the first time that maybe you're not broken after all. And you hope, God, you really hope you made him feel the same way. As he left, you saw Pastor Mike hand him something, a key maybe, and your heart leaped because Max isn't a ghost anymore. He's becoming something real, something visible, something undeniable. The world better be ready because Max is only going to get stronger. And Emma, you'll be right there, watching every brave step he takes. Never forget today. Keep it close. Love, Emma.
Chapter 7. Quiet Places. The first night in the church room felt like a dream Max didn't trust. It was too quiet. The city's usual noises, sirens, shouts, breaking glass, was replaced by a stillness so deep it felt unnatural. Max laid on the narrow cot, staring up at the cracked ceiling, his body stiff on the mattress that smelled faintly of old wood and dust. He kicked the blanket off, pulled it back up, tossed, turned. The warmth was a stranger he didn't know how to welcome. Max sat up, swinging his legs over the edge of the bed. His toes curled against the cool floor as he pressed his palms into the thin mattress, grounding himself. His heart beat too fast, his breath too shallow. He felt like an intruder in someone else's life. He stood across the small room, running a hand along the stained glass window. Moonlight filtered through in soft colors, painting the floor in blues and golds. Max pressed his forehead lightly against the glass, breathing in the cold seeping through it. I'm still here, he whispered. He moved back to the bed and laid down again, pulling the blanket tighter this time. The mattress creaked under his weight, but the sound was small, harmless. The pipes in the walls ticked softly like a heartbeat he didn't know that he needed. No Rico, no Allie, no fight for survival. Just a room, a bed, a door that locked from the inside. It was too much. It was everything. Max closed his eyes, but sleep didn't come easily. Memories surfaced, dragging with them all the nights he had spent shivering under cardboard, jumping awake at the crunch of approaching footsteps, curling smaller and smaller until he barely existed. But here he could uncurl, stretch, breathe. He didn't have to vanish. And slowly, Without realizing it, Max drifted into a real sleep. The first real sleep he'd had in longer than he could remember. No nightmares chased him. No cold bit at him. Just dreams, strange and soft, of golden light spilling through windows, of a gi wrapping his small frame, of fists striking the air, not in fear, but in hope. When morning came, Max woke to the warm amber glow on the wall, the kind that usually belonged to other people's houses. He blinked up at the ceiling, disoriented for a moment. The blanket was still wrapped tightly around him, cocooned like a promise he was afraid to let go of. Max sat up slowly, the mattress groaning beneath him. The aches of his muscles from the alley, from the beatings, from the cold, they were still there. But there was something else there too. Something quieter, something stronger. Hope. Now, for the first time in a very long time, Max let himself believe maybe he could build something new from the ruins. Maybe he was more than the shadows he had come from. Maybe he deserved to stay. He swung his legs over the edge of the bed and stood. The church room creaked around him, old and worn. But to Max, it felt like the beginning of a life worth fighting for. Chapter 8. Crossing Lines. It started with the sneakers. Max noticed them before anything else. 3 pairs. Scuffed, dirty, tapping in rhythm outside the corner store like the city's heartbeat had taken a dark turn. He didn't mean to see them. He was just walking home from the dojo, gym bag slung over one shoulder, still sore from Sensei Daigon's last round of footwork discipline. But then he turned the corner, and they were there. Rico, Jaden, Tank. They leaned against the faded brick wall of Tenney's Market like they owned the block. And maybe they did. At least they used to. But Max wasn't the same kid he had been 2 weeks ago. The boy who used to sneak by with his head down, counting cracks in the sidewalk to avoid eye contact. He was gone. Max slowed his steps. He could have crossed the street, could have ducked into the alley. But something in him said, not this time. Rico spotted him first. His lips curled into a lazy grin, one that never reaches his eyes. Well, look who doesn't know how to stay in his lane. Jaden let out a low whistle. Got yourself a new bag, Maxie? What, the dojo handing out gifts now? Max said nothing, just kept walking. You hear me? Or did Sensei Silence teach you to ignore your old friends? Rico pushed off the wall, stepped into Max's path. They were close now. Too close. Tank stayed where he was, eyes down. Max stood tall. You are not my friends. Jaden's face twisted. What'd you say? Max looked Rico dead in the eyes. You heard me. The air between them went still, cold. Even the wind seemed to pause. Rico's jaw tightened. You think you're something now because you learned how to bow and throw a punch in that fancy little dojo? Max's voice was steady. No, I don't think I'm something. I think I'm done being nothing. Max didn't know what had happened. Somewhere between the dojo mat and Pastor Mike's quiet faith, he had stopped believing Rico's words. Rico stepped forward. Max didn't flinch. Not this time. They stood inches apart, both breathing hard, both waiting for the other to blink. Then Tank's voice came, low and tired. "Leave it, Rico." Rico glanced at him. "What?" Tank met Max's eyes. He's not scared anymore. This is all this ever was. For a moment, no one moved. Then Rico spat on the sidewalk, turned on his heel, and walked away. Jaden followed, muttering under his breath. Tank lingered, and then he nodded once. Respect. Quiet, undeniable. Max exhaled slowly, heart pounding so hard he could barely hear. But inside, something had shifted. That night, he walked into the dojo not like someone who wanted to be there, but like someone who belonged. Sensei Daigon nodded at him as he entered. Emma was already stretching, her bow staff laid across her lap like a sword at rest. When she looked up and saw him, really saw him, her smile was different. Proud. Max sat beside her and whispered, "Rico tried to push me today." Emma leaned in. "What happened?" "I didn't move," he said. "Not even an inch." She didn't cheer, didn't laugh. She just reached over and squeezed his hand for a heartbeat. "That's what strength looks like," she whispered. And then she picked up her bow staff and stood, motioning for him to follow. They sparred that night. Max was still learning the movement, his stance still too narrow, his strikes still too fast. But when Emma swept low and knocked him off his balance, he hit the mat and burst out laughing. Not from pain, from joy, from the absurd miracle of being alive.
Dear future Emma, Max stood up to Rico today. He told you after class so quietly, like it was nothing at all, but you knew right away it was everything. Remember how Max used to be? How he wouldn't even look Rico in the eyes? How every sound, every step behind him made his whole body shake? But today was different. Today he stood firm. Today Max stared Rico straight in the face and told him, "I'm done being nothing." Your heart literally skipped a beat hearing these words, didn't it? You've seen tough kids walk through these doors. Tournament champs, black belts, people who smash bricks with their bare hands, but none of them come close to the strength Max showed today. Because Max's battles aren't out there in the spotlight. His wars are quiet, hidden, internal. And today, he won. He didn't need fists, he didn't need rage, all he needed was honor. And he had it, Emma, he really had it. You don't know what's coming next, if Rico will strike back or if this quiet battle is only just starting. But you know one thing for sure. Max isn't invisible anymore. He's rising, strong and steady. And you'll be right there with him, fighting by his side, until the whole world sees exactly what you see. Never let yourself forget today, Emma. It's important. Love, Emma.
Chapter 9. What We Carry. Max's knuckles were raw. He had stayed after class again, drilling combinations long after the other students had left. The sweat on his back had dried cold against his gi. His muscles trembled, but he kept moving. Each strike sharper than the last. Every pivot more deliberate. Punch, step, turn, block. Sensei Daigon watched from a distance. Arms folded, saying nothing, not correcting, not interrupting. Just witnessing. Max didn't need praise. He wasn't training for belts or trophies. He was training to become someone who didn't fold under pressure, someone who didn't give up when the world got heavy. He was training to prove he deserved the life people were trying to give him. Because inside, no matter how far he'd come, one fear still whispered in his mind. You're just a burden. That afternoon, Max helped Pastor Mike stack folding chairs after a community lunch in the church's rec room. Dozens of people from the neighborhood had come through. Single moms, older veterans, kids without coats. Max had seen them all. Quiet, hungry, tired, like him. He wiped down tables, carried trays to the kitchen, swept the scuffed floor. When Mike tried to thank him, Max just shook his head. "I owe you." Mike paused. "Max, this isn't a trade." Max didn't meet his eyes. "Still feels like I owe you something." Mike let out a quiet sigh. "You don't owe me, kid. But if you feel like you need to give back, give to them." He nodded towards the crowd as they trickled out. Kids with backpacks too small, parents with eyes too tired, elders too proud to ask for seconds. Give them the version of you that is starting to believe in himself. That evening, Max walked the neighborhood, not because he had to, because he wanted to. He carried a small plastic bag Pastor Mike had handed him earlier, granola bars, 2 water bottles, and some gloves a local shop had donated. He gave the gloves to a boy sleeping behind a boarded-up hardware store, left the water for an older woman in a bus shelter who was wearing 3 sweaters and still shivering. The city hadn't changed, but maybe he had. Maybe he was learning how to change it, one small kindness at a time. He didn't say much, just handed things over and moved on. But his heart felt steady, not fixed, not full, but steady. And that was new. From across the street, Rico watched. Hidden in the mouth of a dark alley, arms crossed over his chest, one leg bouncing. Watching Max hand a sandwich to a girl and her little brother sitting on a stoop. Watching the way people smiled at him now, nodding at him, seeing him. Jaden muttered beside him, "He's playing hero now?" Rico didn't answer. His jaw clenched, because it wasn't just that Max was visible now. It was that people were starting to respect him, and respect was power. Rico had always held it, and now it was slipping through his fingers. At the dojo, Max arrived early the next day to sweep the floors before class. He scrubbed scuff marks from the corners, polished the mirrors, refilled the water jugs. When students started filing in, they nodded at him, not with pity, with recognition. Even Sensei Dagon said quietly, "You're starting to understand." Max looked up. Understand what? That honor starts when no one is watching. Emma was late that day, rare for her, but when she finally rushed in, hair still damp from a quick shower, she spotted Max and stopped mid-step. "You did all this?" He shrugged. Felt right." She smiled. "Of course it did." They trained together again, and Max was sharper than ever. He didn't overthink. He didn't rush. He trusted his body, trusted Emma's guidance, trusted that he could keep growing. And when the class ended, he bowed to the dojo and to Sensei and to her. It wasn't mechanical. It was devotion. After class, while others laughed and grabbed water bottles, Max and Emma sat side by side against the back wall of the dojo, stretching quietly. For a long time, neither spoke. Then Emma said, so softly he almost missed it, "I used to think, if I trained hard enough, my mom might come back. Max turned to her, heart lurching. Emma stared at the floor, fingers twisting a loose thread from her pant leg. Every perfect punch, every perfect kick, like maybe if I became strong enough, she'd realize I was worth staying for. Max didn't know what to say. Words felt too heavy, too small. So he just shifted closer, their shoulders almost touching. "You're worth staying for," he said, his voice cracking slightly, but he didn't care. Emma smiled, a small, broken, radiant thing, and for the first time, she leaned her head slightly against his shoulder. They stayed like that for a long, quiet moment, the noise of the dojo falling to nothing. Max closed his eyes, and for once, the silence between them wasn't heavy. It was home. That night, Max walked back towards the church. The air was cold again, but he wasn't shivering. He was still in his gi, jacket tied around his waist, walking tall down streets that used to make him flinch, until a voice stopped him. "Maxie!" He turned. Rico stepped from the alley, alone this time. No swagger, no backup, just a long, quiet stare. Max didn't move. Rico took a step forward. "You think you're better than me now?" Max stayed still. "No." Rico scoffed. "You walk around like some angel, helping people, bowing. Like that makes you clean." "I'm not clean," Max said. "I'm trying." Rico's face twisted. "Trying don't mean a thing out here." Max met his eyes. "It does to them." He turned and walked away. This time, Rico didn't stop him, but his silence was heavier than any insult.
Dear future Emma, today Max spent the whole day helping people, not because anyone asked or expected it, but because he truly wanted to. He wiped tables clean, handed gloves to kids who were shivering in the cold, and gave out food to people the world seems determined to ignore. Then he came into the dojo and swept the floors with this gentle respect. These mats aren't just mats, they're a place we'll figure out who we're meant to be. Today Max filled them with something incredible, something genuine and real. He moved differently today, Emma. He spoke differently, carried himself like someone who wasn't afraid to show compassion, who wasn't afraid to care. And even if he doesn't realize it yet, he's changing this entire neighborhood one quiet act of kindness at a time. But Rico is watching. You can feel it, can't you? The air gets tighter, darker when he's nearby. It's like the shadows refuse to let go of what they've always controlled. And yes, that scares you. Because you know the stronger Max becomes, the more Rico will want to destroy him. But here's the truth, Emma. Max is stronger than Rico could ever imagine, stronger than Max himself realizes. Because this isn't about karate moves or fighting skills. This is about honor, and Max is learning to wear that honor like armor. If Rico tries to hurt him again, he better understand one crucial thing. Max isn't alone anymore, and neither are you. Hold on to that, Emma. Hold on to it tightly. Love, Emma.
Chapter 10, When the Fire Stays Quiet. Max had barely stepped out of the dojo when he saw it. The message was scrawled in thick black marker across the glass window of the church's front door. "Get out, rat. You don't belong." The handwriting was rushed, angry, letters jagged like they'd been carved with the edge of something broken. The black streaks trailed down the sides of the doorway, as if the marker had run dry before the rage did. Max's chest went cold. Pastor Mike was already outside, kneeling on the church steps with a bucket of soapy water, gently scrubbing at the words with a rag. The marker smeared into dark gray streaks. It wasn't coming off easily. Max dropped his gym bag and ran to help. Who did this? Mike looked up. Doesn't matter. Yes, it does. The old man wrung out the rag and finally met Max's eyes. You already know who. Rico. Max's jaw clenched. His fist curled at his sides. This is my fault, he said. No, Mike said firmly. This is what happens when light starts to shine where darkness has gotten comfortable. You are not the problem, Max. You are the threat. Max didn't know if he wanted that kind of power, but he knew he couldn't walk away from it anymore. Max knelt beside him. His arms moved automatically, rubbing, rinsing, scrubbing, but his mind burned with anger, with the need to do something, to make Rico stop, to show him he couldn't keep pushing people down just because he was sinking. I should go talk to him, Max muttered. No, Mike said, gentler now. You don't fight fire with fire, son. You stand steady and let the flame burn out against your peace. Max stared at him, eyes tight. But he could have hurt you. I've lived through worse, Mike said, and I've seen enough fights to know the strongest ones aren't won with fists. Max swallowed hard. I see the weight in you, Mike added. You carry it like it's yours alone. But this place isn't about one man. It's about all of us. And when you choose to be more than your anger, that's when the world starts changing. The words echoed in Max's mind as he rinsed the last of the gray water from the church steps. At the dojo that night, Sensei Daigon called the class to attention with a rare smile. In 4 weeks, he said, our school will compete in the Winter Regional Karate Tournament. A murmur rippled through the students. Excitement, nerves, pride. This isn't about trophies or titles, Sensei continued. It's about discipline, respect, and representing the honor we carry, not just in here, but out there. Max's heart thudded. He didn't raise his hand, didn't ask if he could compete. He just looked at Emma. She was already looking at him. Later, as they cleaned the practice weapons in the back room, Max broke the silence. I don't know if I can do it. Emma glanced up from her bow staff. The tournament? He nodded. What if I freeze? What if I fail? She set the staff down and leaned against the wall. Then you'll get back up. That's all any of us will ever do. It's not just the fighting, Max said. It's stepping into the light, letting everyone see me. Emma was quiet for a moment. Then she said, do you know why I love tournaments? He looked at her. Because no one can hide in the ring. You have to show who you are. You have to fight with everything. Your heart, your fear, your story. Max's throat tightened. I don't think my story is worth showing. She stepped closer, looked him in the eyes. That is the only story I want to see in that ring. Max blinked. She wasn't joking, and she wasn't trying to cheer him up. She meant it. You believe in me that much? He asked quietly. I do, she said. But more than that, I need you to believe in yourself, because when you walk into that ring, Max, you're not just fighting for points. You're showing this whole neighborhood what survival with honor looks like. He didn't know what to say, so she filled the silence. I'll be there, she whispered, in your corner, always. And just like that, Max felt stronger than he had all week. That night, as he lay in bed staring at the ceiling of the small church room, he didn't hear sirens or the wind outside or even his doubts. He just kept hearing Emma's voice. I'll be there, in your corner. And suddenly, that was enough.
Dear future Emma, the tournament is only 4 weeks away. Sensei announced it today, and you could feel the excitement spark through the entire dojo. Some kids were buzzing with anticipation, others looked absolutely terrified. But Max, he looked like he was somewhere between running away and hiding in the shadows. But Emma, here's the thing you wish Max could truly see. He's already won the hardest battle. He showed up, he stayed, he changed. The tournament ring won't demand perfection. It will only ask him to be brave, to be real, and to be himself. You don't know if he'll win a medal. You don't know if his kata will be flawless or if his sparring will be strong enough to impress the judges. But you do know what everyone else will see. They'll see a boy who used to be invisible, standing right there in the center, steady and brave, refusing to disappear again. And that, Emma, that's power. That's honor. And if Rico tries to hurt him or intimidate him before he even steps into the ring, then Rico is about to learn something Max already knows deep down. The quietest flames are always the hardest to extinguish. And Max, he's burning brighter every day. Remember this moment, Emma. Never forget. Love, Emma.
Chapter 11. The bruising comes before the breakthrough. The dojo buzzed with electricity Max could feel in his bones. The tournament loomed, less than a week away, and every punch thrown, every stance corrected, crackled with a new urgency. The students moved like warriors prepping for battle. Max threw himself into the rhythm, training before class, after class, until sweat soaked through his gi and exhaustion drained from his limbs. Sensei Daigon's words echoed in his mind. Learn to fight. Learn to choose when not to. Max didn't fully understand, but he would. He always stayed late now, mopping floors, stacking mats, memorizing every inch of the dojo as if afraid it might vanish. Emma stayed too. Sometimes stretched on the mat, sometimes just sitting nearby, pretending not to watch him. Their conversations were quieter now, deeper. She believed in him, and somewhere, deep down, Max was starting to believe too. It happened after one of those late nights. Max was walking the back streets home, the safest shortcut he'd memorized, when he turned the corner and he saw them waiting. 3 shadows. Rico, Jaden, Tank. Max stopped. He didn't run, not this time. Rico stepped forward, a cruel grin twisting his face. Look at you, all clean, all proud. Max said nothing. Jaden spat on the sidewalk. You forgot where you come from, Maxie? Tank didn't speak. His hands stayed deep in his pockets, eyes turned sideways. Max met Rico's gaze, and for the first time, he saw it. Fear. Not fear of Max's fist. Fear of Max's hope. Because hope was contagious. Hope was dangerous. And Rico's world didn't have room for it. Rico lunged first, a flash of movement in the dark. Max ducked instinctively, his training snapping into place. He blocked the first blow, twisted away from the second. Jaden came to him next, a wild punch, sloppy with anger. And Max caught it against his forearm, shoving Jaden back 2 steps. For a second, he thought, maybe. Then Tank moved. A rough hand caught Max's jacket, yanking him sideways. His back slammed against the brick wall, knocking the air from his lungs. He stumbled, disoriented. Rico's fist found his ribs. Pain blossomed sharp and immediate. Max gritted his teeth, trying to breathe through it, trying to stay standing. Another blow, another shove. He hit the pavement hard, the world tilting around him. He thought of the dojo, of Sensei Daigon's steady voice, of Emma's fierce smile, of Pastor Mike's quiet faith. And somehow, even broken and bruised, Max found the strength to rise to one knee. Rico's voice spat venom. Stay down. You're nothing. Max lifted his head. Blood trickled from the corner of his mouth. His voice was a whisper, ragged but unbreakable. Then why are you so scared of me? Rico's silence was louder than any shout Max had ever heard. And that was all Max needed. He did not win the fight, but he won something more important. Tank pulled Rico back, muttering something low and urgent. Jaden followed, casting a last glare over his shoulder. And then they were gone, swallowed by the night. Max stayed kneeled for a moment, shuddering with pain. But he wasn't defeated. He was still here. He always would be. Pastor Mike found him slumped on the church steps an hour later, face pale under the streetlights. Mike didn't ask questions. He just kneeled down, helped Max inside, cleaned the blood with careful hands. It still hurts, Max whispered. Mike nodded. Growth always does. Max closed his eyes, pressing the ice pack tighter against his ribs. He didn't know if he could stand tomorrow. He didn't know if he could spar. Didn't know if he could even breathe without hurting. But he knew this. He wouldn't give up. Not now, not ever. Because honor wasn't about never falling. It was about getting back up.
Dear future Emma, you knew something was wrong the second you saw Max today. His lip was swollen, his movements stiff, his breath labored like every breath hurt. But his eyes were still burning fiercely. He told you everything. How Rico and others ambushed him, how he fought back but couldn't win, how he felt like he'd failed. But Emma, you've never been prouder of him. Because even when they hurt him, he didn't break. He didn't lash out in anger. He didn't become the very thing that tried to tear him apart. He stayed true to himself. And that's real strength. That's true honor. The tournament is only 6 days away. Max had every reason to quit, every right to say he wasn't ready. But he didn't. Instead, he showed up tonight. Ribs taped, gloves on, determination blazing in his eyes. Because Max might still be learning how to fight, but his art already knows exactly how to win. And if Rico or anyone else thinks they can stop Max from rising now, they have no idea what's coming next. Because Max isn't just stepping into the tournament rink, he's stepping into the light. And this time, the whole world is going to see him shine. Hold on to this moment, Emma. Keep it close. Love, Emma.
Chapter 12. The moment the neighborhood stood up. The gym pulsed with noise and life. Feet pounded the hardwood floors. Banners fluttered from the rafters. Microphones cracked, announcing divisions and matches and clipped, hurried voices. Max stood just inside the entrance. His tournament pass trembled slightly in his fingers. The world tilted around him. So much movement, so much sound. But inside, he was a still point because he wasn't alone. The neighborhood had come. Pastor Mike, standing tall with his hands in his pockets, nodded proudly. Emma's dad waving from the bleachers. Kids Max had seen on street corners. Old men from the barber shop. Faces he had passed 1,000 times without a second glance. Now here, now watching. For him. Max's throat tightened. He walked slowly towards the mats, every step echoing louder than the last inside his head. Emma spotted him first, waving him over with a wide grin. She was already suited up, her brown belt tied with careful precision. "You made it," she said. Max smiled tightly. "Barely." Emma punched his arm lightly. "Barely is still winning." Max's fingers fumbled at the knot of his belt. It didn't feel right. Too loose, too tight, like the whole world was tilting around him and he couldn't find his center. Before he could panic, her gentle hands touched his. Without a word, she took over, fixing the belt with quick, sure movements. Their fingers brushed once, twice, and Max felt something electric jolt up his spine. He looked up, and for a moment, everything else disappeared. Emma's eyes were steady, fierce, soft. "Breathe," she whispered. "You're ready." She tied the final knot with a small tug. Her hands lingered for one heartbeat longer than necessary. Then she smiled, and somehow Max felt the knot tighten inside his chest, not with fear, but with a strength he didn't know he had. Sensei Dagon appeared beside them, hands clasped calmly behind his back. His gaze settled on Max. "Remember what we trained for," Sensei said. "Not trophies, not pride." Max nodded, heart pounding against his ribs. "We train for honor." The announcement blared across the gym. "First round, Division 14, forms." Max's division. He stepped onto the mat when his name was called. The gym seemed to fall away. The noise blurred into a low hum. The crowd becoming nothing but a sea of colors. It was just him now. Him, the mat, and the fire burning quietly inside his chest. He bowed to the judges. He bowed to the mat. He took his ready stance. And then he moved. Each technique cut through the air with deliberate strength. Every stance rooted him deeper into the ground. His body ached. Bruises from Rico's attack throbbed with every strike. But he didn't slow down. He didn't falter. Because Max wasn't fighting for a medal. He was fighting to prove to himself, to his neighborhood, to the world, that he was still standing, and that he always would be. When the final move ended, fists chambered, eyes forward, Max held the stance longer than required. A beat longer, a statement. And then he bowed. Once he had been invisible. Now the whole room saw him, and more importantly, he saw himself. As he left the mat, the applause hit him like a wave, not just polite clapping, real roaring applause from the bleachers, from the streets, from people who had seen him at his lowest and still believed in his rise. Emma met him on the edge of the mat, face flushed with pride. "That," she whispered, "is a fight worth winning." Max managed a shaky smile. It wasn't about the medal. It never had been. It was about choosing to stand, to be seen, to fight for a life where hope was not a weakness, but a strength. For the first time, as he looked around the gym, at his sensei, his friends, his neighborhood, Max realized something that nearly brought him to his knees. He was never alone. He never had been, not really. The fire inside him wasn't a flicker anymore. It was a beacon, a light for others to find their way. And Max was ready to carry it forward, no matter how dark the world tried to become.
Dear future Emma, you saw it. You felt it. Today wasn't just a tournament. It wasn't just points or medals or polished katas. It was Max's victory over every broken night, every cold alley, every time the world told him he didn't matter. You watched him step onto that mat, not as a ghost hiding behind broken shoes and bruised ribs, but as a warrior who carried his story with pride. You saw the way the judges watched him. You saw the way our neighborhood, stood and roared for him. You saw him become something unstoppable, not because he won a match, because he won himself back. And Emma, you knew, in the breathless, perfect moment, that you would spend the rest of your life believing in people the way you believe in Max. You would spend the rest of your life fighting to make sure no one ever feels invisible again. Because if Max could find his way out of the dark, if Max could carry his light into the ring, into the world, then so could you. So could anyone. And the world would be better for it. Never forget today, Emma. Never let the world make you small or hard or bitter. Because Max didn't just survive. He became a flame that nothing, no one could ever put out. And now, you're part of that fire too. Carry it forward, always, with love and fierce pride. Emma.
Chapter 13. After the applause. The tournament was over. The mats were rolled up, the lights turned off, the bleachers empty. But something lingered. Not the sound of the crowd or the sting of bruises. Not even the echo of Max's bow staff slicing through the air. It was something quieter. Attention. Max felt it in every step he took. People on the street smiled at him now. A man outside the hardware store clapped him on the back and said, "Proud of you, son." A group of younger kids followed him after class, asking if he could show them how to block like he did during the finals. Even the old woman who ran the corner flower shop pressed a single sunflower into his palm and whispered, "You're the light, Max. Don't let them dim it." But inside, Max felt heavier than ever because he didn't feel like a hero. Not really. As Max walked through Garrison Street, he noticed things he hadn't seen before. The broken fence around the park was patched with fresh boards. Someone had cleaned the graffiti off the old bus stop. The sandwich shop had hung a hand-painted sign in the window, "Home of the Champions." Kids kicked a battered soccer ball down the street, shouting and laughing without fear. And everywhere Max turned, people nodded to him. Not in pity, not in politeness, but with pride. As if somehow standing up in the tournament had shifted something more than just a trophy count. It had shifted the air itself. Hope had a sound now. It was rising, one heartbeat at a time. He sat behind the church that evening, back against the brick wall, watching the light shift through the clouds. The wind tugged at his sleeves. He turned the sunflower over in his hand again and again. He wasn't used to being seen. He wasn't sure he deserved it. Emma found him there, as she always did. "You disappeared," she said, sitting beside him. "I needed quiet," he murmured. She leaned back against the wall. "You okay?" "I don't know," he admitted. "Everyone keeps acting like I did something amazing, but I didn't save anyone. I didn't fix anything. I just performed." Emma was quiet for a moment. "Max," she said, "you didn't win that crowd because of a trophy." "I didn't even win first place." "You didn't have to," she said. "You showed them what survival looks like when it refuses to become bitterness. You gave them hope." Max stared ahead. "It just feels like, I don't know, like if I stop trying, they'll forget. Or worse, they'll realize I was never worth cheering for in the first place." Emma turned to him, her voice suddenly fierce. "You don't have to earn being loved, Max." Max didn't answer right away. He just sat there, sunflower turning slowly between his fingers, trying to believe it. "You're not a math problem," she said. "You're not a transaction. You're a person. And what you've given this neighborhood, that isn't about perfection. It's about permission. Permission? He asked. She nodded. To believe again. They sat in silence for a while. Then Max whispered, "You believed in me before anyone else did." Emma smiled softly. "I saw you before you saw yourself." Why? Because you looked like someone who wasn't done fighting, and I've always believed in fighters. Max turned towards her, unsure of what to say. So he didn't speak. He leaned in instead, just enough. Emma didn't move away. Their foreheads touched. It wasn't a kiss. Not yet. But it was everything. Over the next week, the neighborhood began to shift. Slowly, quietly, beautifully. 2 kids from the project showed up at the dojo, asking if there was a scholarship program. There wasn't, but Sensei Daigon waived the fees and handed them white belts anyways. A man who had been evicted last winter stopped by the church to donate canned goods. Someone started repainting the mural on the side of the laundromat, a fist wrapped in a rising sun. Beneath it, someone had scrawled the word in fresh black paint, Max. He saw it for the first time on a walk with Emma. She smiled. "I told you, you gave them permission." Max stared at the mural for a long time. "I don't want to be a symbol." "You don't have to try to be," Emma replied. "You just have to keep showing up." That night, Max sat with Pastor Mike on the church steps. "Do you think they'll forget?" he asked. Mike sipped his tea. "Maybe, but they'll remember when the next fight comes. And when it does, they'll stand taller because they saw someone else do it first." Max looked down at his hands. "I still don't feel like I've earned all of this." Mike smiled. "Then keep building it. That's how you know it's real."
Dear future Emma, the world keeps trying to tell us we don't matter, that our neighborhoods are broken, that our kids are lost, that our stories don't count. But then Max walked into the center of that gym and everything changed. Not because he won gold, not because he shouted the loudest. He stood with honor, even when no one expected him to. Now the neighborhood is waking up. They're painting walls again. They're walking into the dojo with their head held higher. They're talking about our Max, because he's theirs now, because he's ours. He's not just yours anymore, Emma. He belongs to all of us. And every time you see him walk these streets, quiet, steady, unsure of the light he's carrying, you want to tell him, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to stay in the light, because it's not just saving him anymore. It's saving all of us. Never forget how much one heart can change everything, Emma. Love, Emma.
Chapter 14. Cracks in the Crown. Rico punched the wall hard enough to bleed. He stood in the back stairway of an abandoned apartment complex, the kind of place no one patrolled, no one cleaned, no one cared about, except him. This was his corner, his escape, his kingdom, and it was shrinking. He paced back and forth, knuckles dripping red, breathing heavy. Max. The name echoed louder than any cheer in that stupid gym. Max, the homeless kid. Max, the charity case. Max, the hero. Every time Rico walked the block, he heard someone talking about him. Kids mimicked his kata in the street. Mothers whispered that maybe the dojo was worth saving up for. The mural on the laundromat wall, the one that used to have Rico's tag, now had Max's name painted over it in bright, defiant black. It was like Max had rewritten the neighborhood, and every corner Rico had once ruled with fear was slipping away. He didn't understand it. He hurt people, broke noses, took respect. And it had worked, until now, until Max refused to play by the rules. Rico spit on the ground and muttered, "This is your fault," as if Max could hear him from blocks away. Jaden showed up an hour later, out of breath and looking nervous. They're saying the church kids are putting together some cleanup thing. Max's idea. What kind of cleanup? Empty lot next to the church? Says he wants to build a park or something. Rico stared at him, then laughed, a low, bitter sound. He wants to build a park? Jaden nodded. Kids are showing up with rakes and trash bags already. Rico looked out the broken window. I'm gonna burn it down. 3 blocks away, Max stood at the edge of the empty lot beside the church, a rake in one hand and a rusted bicycle frame at his feet. The lot was overgrown. Thorn bushes, soda cans, broken bottles, a half-collapsed fence. A mattress molded from years of rain leaned against a dying oak tree. But Max didn't see a dump. He saw a start. He had first noticed the kids playing in the street 2 nights ago, barefoot, dodging traffic. A car had swerved, a horn screamed. The ball bounced off a windshield and disappeared under a delivery truck. The driver had screamed at them to get lost. They had nowhere else to go. And now, here Max stood. A few kids from the church youth program joined him. Pastor Mike brought trash bags. Emma arrived with gloves and a bucket of nails. We're really doing this, she asked. Max looked around. No, he said, we're starting. They pulled weeds, hauled trash, dug up buried plastic. Emma found an old basketball half deflated, and the kids started tossing it around while the older ones kept clearing. A few neighbors come out to watch. Then someone brought lemonade. Then someone else brought 2 shovels. By sunset, the lot was cleaner than it had been in years. They hadn't built a park, but they had made space. Max stood at the center, rake in hand, looking around at the sweat-streaked faces, the small smiles, the flickers of pride. Emma walked over, brushed a dirt smudge off his cheek. You realize this means they're never going to stop looking at you now, right? Max nodded. I'm not trying to lead. You don't have to, she said. You just have to keep showing up. 2 blocks away, Rico sat in the passenger seat of a parked car, watching through binoculars. His knuckles were bandaged now, his jaw clenched tight. He watched Max laughing with kids, watched Pastor Mike shaking hands, watched Emma hug a girl who had found a 4-leaf clover in the grass. Jaden sat behind the wheel, silent. Look at them, Rico muttered, like he's some kind of king. Jaden didn't reply. I built these streets, Rico hissed. I made respect, and now it's all gone because of him. He turned to Jaden. This ends soon. Jaden's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Are you sure? Rico's voice was ice. Yeah, I'm done watching him take what's mine.
Dear future Emma, today you spent the whole day side by side with Max, out in the dirt, the sun, and the broken glass. You didn't build a playground, you didn't break ground on some shiny community center, you just showed up. And Max, he worked like he owned the earth. An apology, like every bottle he picked up was a silent promise to the kids watching from the sidewalks. No one told him to do it. He just saw the need and answered it. That's what real leadership looks like, Emma. No titles, no speeches, presence. The kind of presence that says, I see you, I care, I'm still here. But there's a shadow too. You saw a car today, idling in the corner, a face you didn't recognize, hidden behind tinted windows. You didn't need to see their eyes to feel it. They were watching, they were hating. Because Max is building something beautiful, and there's always someone who wants to burn down what they can't control. But they're gonna have to get through all of us first. Because Max isn't just the boy who survived the streets anymore. He's the boy who's changing them. And whatever comes next, we will rise with him, always. Love, Emma.
Chapter 15. Through the Fire. The night was still. A rare, breathless kind of still. No sirens, no shouting, just the hum of faraway traffic and the occasional rustle of wind slipping through cracked windows. Max stirred in his sleep. Something wasn't right. There was a taste in the air. Bitter, thick, like copper and ash. He shifted under the blanket, brow furrowing. Then he heard it. A pop, sharp and unnatural, followed by another, louder. His eyes shot open. Smoke. It crept under the door like a living thing, curling low along the floor, dense and gray. The moment Max inhaled, he coughed hard. His throat burned, his eyes stung. He shot out of bed, stumbling towards the door in his tiny room behind the church sanctuary. Another pop, this time followed by a dull boom that rattled the windows. Flames. Orange light licked the hallway walls just beyond the doorframe. Heat slapped him in the face when he cracked it open. The church was on fire, and not just a small one. It was raging. Smoke poured through the halls like a rising tide. Max dropped to the floor, coughing, heart pounding so loud he could barely think. He had to get out, but his mind screamed something louder. Where is Pastor Mike? Max turned, scanning the hallway through the thick smoke. He knew Mike's sleeping area was just off the sanctuary, closer to the front, past the narrow hallway that was already filling with smoke. He had seconds, maybe less. Most people would have run. Max ran toward the flames. Each breath hurt. The heat was alive, blistering the paint off the walls, cracking glass in the windows. Max ducked low, crawling, hands burning against the hot floor. He couldn't see more than a few feet ahead. He called out, "Mike!" Nothing. Another step, another searing breath. "Pastor Mike!" Still nothing. Then, through the smoke, a sound. A weak cough. Max turned sharply and spotted him, slumped just beyond the threshold of the sanctuary, trapped behind a collapsed beam. The old man's robe was singed, his face slick with sweat. "Mike!" Max crawled the last few feet, voice breaking. I got you. Hold on." He tried to lift the beam, but it was too heavy, wedged at an angle. The flames chewed at the doorway behind him, getting closer. "Max," Mike grasped, eyes fluttering. "Go. Leave me." "No," Max shouted, panic rising. "I'm not leaving you." The smoke thickened. Max gritted his teeth and slipped behind the beam, wrapping one arm around Mike's chest. With a cry of effort, he dragged the older man sideways, inch by inch, until Mike's legs cleared the collapsed wood. He collapsed beside him, coughing violently, lungs screaming for clean air. The ceiling groaned above them. They didn't have much time. Max got under Mike's arm. Come on, we can do this." Together they stumbled forward. Flames licked the walls around them. The air was unbearable, so thick it felt like trying to breathe underwater. Max's vision tunneled. The door was still far away. He turned towards the nearest stained glass window. No choice. He charged with everything he had, shoulder first, dragging Mike behind him. Crash! The glass exploded outward in a shower of color and heat. They spilled out into the grass behind the church, Max landing hard, Mike tumbling beside him. Air. Cold. Clean. Max gasped, coughing so hard he saw stars. Then hands, Emma's hands, grabbed him. Neighbors, people, someone pulled Mike aside, screaming, sirens, a hose, someone shouting his name. Max barely heard any of it. He looked back. The church was engulfed. The fire had taken it, but not them. He sat in the back of an ambulance later, wrapped in a blanket, Emma beside him holding his hand in both of hers. "You saved him," she whispered. Max shook his head slowly. "I didn't think. I just couldn't leave him. You didn't run." "I wanted to." She leaned her head against his. "But you didn't." Pastor Mike would live. Smoke inhalation, minor burns, dehydration. But he would live. Max stood by his hospital bed the next morning, eyes stinging for a very different reason now. Mike opened one eye. "You didn't listen," he croaked. Max laughed, voice hoarse. "No, I didn't." Mike squeezed his hand. "Thank you." Max lowered his head. "I thought I lost you." Mike nodded slowly. "You almost did." And then, through chapped lips and broken breath, Mike said, "But now they know, all of them, what kind of man you really are."
Dear future Emma, the church is gone. It stood for 60 years. Now it's nothing but blackened wood, smoke, and ash. But here's the crazy part. The neighborhood isn't mourning the building. They're rallying around the boy who ran into the fire. Max could have died. You watched those flames, heartbreaking, convinced you were about to lose him. And then he came crashing through the stained glass window like something out of a story, dragging Pastor Mike behind him, half conscious, skin blistered, eyes widened with fear and with fight. You've never seen anything like it. Max didn't just survive that night. He chose it. He chose to stay. He chose to stave. He chose to become the kind of person people believe in. You don't know who started that fire, but you can feel it, Emma. Something darker is coming, but so is something stronger, because Max walked through the fire, and now he's unshakable. He's not just a hero anymore. He's hope. Never let yourself forget the night the fire couldn't take him, Emma. Love, Emma.
Chapter 16. The Cost of Courage. The smell hung heavy in the air. Burnt wood, wet ash, melted glass. It clung to Max's clothes, his skin, his hair. No matter how many showers he took, how many shirts he borrowed from Emma's dad, he couldn't wash it away. The church was gone. The lot beside it, the one that they had cleared just days ago, now looked like the edge of a battlefield. Yellow tape flapped in the wind. The cross from the steeple lay half buried in the soot and debris. And the silence? It was worse than the sirens had been. Max sat on the edge of the couch in Emma's living room, arms resting on his knees, eyes staring blankly at the floor. He hadn't spoken much since the fire. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the flames again, heard Pastor Mike's cough, felt the heat clawing at his back as he dragged him through the broken glass. Mr. Palmer, Emma's dad, hadn't said much either, just quietly offered him the couch, a blanket, and a place at the dinner table. "Thank you," Max had whispered the first night. Mr. Palmer had only nodded. "You're family now." Outside, the neighborhood had changed. Not in the hopeful way Max had dreamed. Not yet. The air was colder. People spoke in hushed tones. Mothers kept their kids inside. shop owners locked up early. Fear had returned. And Max could feel the eyes watching him, blaming him, or worse, waiting to see what he would do next. Emma sat beside him on the couch that night, knees drawn to her chest, both of them lit only by the warm flicker of a lamp across the room. "You're not sleeping," she said softly. "I can't." "Nightmares?" "Not nightmares," he said. "Just memories." She nodded, curling a little closer. "You saved him," she whispered. Max's voice was flat and lost everything else. Emma frowned. That church was never just bricks. It was the people, the stories, the prayers. You didn't lose that. He looked at her. Then why does it feel like we're all broken again? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she took his hand. They sat there like that for a long time, fingers laced, breaths slow. "I'm scared," Max said finally. "I am too," she admitted. "Everyone is. I thought if I was brave enough, strong enough, the fear would stop." Emma looked at him, eyes soft and shining. "Being brave doesn't stop the fear, Max. It just keeps you moving through it." Max shook his head. "It's not just fear, it's guilt. I keep thinking, what if it's my fault? What if I pushed too hard, got too visible?" Emma's hand tightened around his. "Don't you dare say that." He looked at her startled. "You inspired people," she said. "You gave them permission to believe again. If someone lit a match because they were afraid of the light you brought, that's not your guilt to carry. That's their shame." Tears welled in Max's eyes, unspoken until now. "But Mike, he almost died because of me." "No," she whispered. "He lived because of you." Her voice cracked. "Max, you don't get it. I've never met anyone like you. You're not perfect. You doubt everything. You're scared and you mess up. And you still step forward anyways." He didn't respond. He couldn't. His throat closed and his chest tightened. And he just let himself feel it. Emma leaned against him, head on his shoulder. "I didn't fall for you because you were brave." He turned slightly. She looked up, eyes steady. "I fell for you because you chose honor. When you didn't have to. When it cost you. When no one would have blamed you for walking away." Max blinked. "You love me?" Emma smiled. "I'm afraid I do." His voice was a whisper. "I don't know how to deserve that." "You don't have to. Just hold it like I'm holding you." And she did. Right there on the couch, wrapped in silence and tension and love and grief. The next morning, Max stood at the edge of the charred ruins, alone. The wind picked up ash like snowflakes, and the foundation creaked under its own weight. But in the distance, a boy dribbled a basketball. A girl rode a too-small bike with no seat cushion. A few neighbors placed flowers against the fence. The neighborhood was still watching, still waiting, still afraid. Max didn't have a speech. He just whispered to himself, "I'm not done yet."
Dear future Emma, Max doesn't know it yet, but the whole neighborhood still sees him. Some are scared now, some are angry, some are wondering if maybe it's safer to slide back into the shadows and let the fire have the final word. But not Max. He stood in the flames, and even though it hurt, even though it broke something deep inside him, He never stopped looking for someone else to protect. That's what makes him different. He doesn't chase the light. He is the light. And if anyone thinks they can put it out, they haven't seen how the neighborhood is starting to glow beside him. We're not rebuilding the church just yet, but we're rebuilding something even more important, ourselves. Hold on to that truth, Emma. It's just the beginning. Love, Emma.
Chapter 17. What you choose in the fire. It was the heat in the shopkeeper's voice that gave it away. Max had stopped in at Hernandez Hardware to check on supplies for the cleanup project. He didn't even ask about the fire. He didn't have to. Mr. Hernandez leaned in, lowering his voice, eyes darting to the street beyond the cracked windows. "I saw who did it," he said. "Your church. The fire." Max froze. "I was closing up. The alley behind my shop has a view. Saw them with the canisters. 3 of them. They laughed when they lit it." Max didn't blink. "Who?" Hernandez hesitated, then said, "Rico." The name hit Max like a punch to the chest. Everything went silent. He nodded once, turned, and walked out of the store without another word. He didn't have to go far. Rico and his gang were already there, leaning against a broken bench just down the block, beneath the mural that now bore Max's name. Tank and Jaden laughed at something Rico had said. Rico grinned, flicking a lighter open and closed in his hand. "Yo," Rico called when he saw Max. "You warm enough at night now, or should I light up another church?" The world slowed. Something inside Max snapped. He stepped forward. "Say it again." Rico raised his eyebrows, didn't stutter. Max didn't speak. He dropped his backpack on the ground, rolled his sleeves, and moved. Tank lunged first. Max slipped under the punch, swept his leg, and sent the massive boy crashing into the pavement. Jaden came from the left, fast but sloppy. Max blocked the blow with a rising forearm, twisted, and landing a spinning back kick that knocked the wind out of him. Rico cursed and rushed forward, fists flying. Max caught his arm mid-swing, twisted at the elbow, and drove a knee into his stomach. Rico stumbled back, but Max did not stop. Not this time. He moved with clarity, precision, rage mixed with every kata, every sparring drill, every lesson burned into his muscle and memory. A high roundhouse sent Jaden sprawling. Tank grabbed Max from behind, lifting him off the ground. Max twisted, drove his heel into the side of Tank's knee. The bigger boy dropped. Max turned, ducked, struck. Open palm to the throat. Elbow to the ribs. Sweep. Down. Rico stared at him, breathing heavy. "Should have finished you when I had the chance." Max walked toward him, slow, purposeful. "You don't get to finish anything." Rico swung, wild. Max caught his wrist, twisted, shoved him against the wall. The lighter clattered to the sidewalk. Flames reflected in Max's eyes, not real ones, but the ones Rico had left behind. Max raised his fist. Rico flinched and froze. Max's fist hovered in the air, breathing hard, shaking. And then he lowered it, stepping back, chest heaving. Rico slid to the ground, humiliated. His gang lay around him, groaning, defeated. Max stood alone, and then a slow, steady clap from across the street. Master Dagon. He stepped forward, calm as always. The street was still. Only the wind moved now. Dagon walked to Max and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You fought well." Max looked down. "I lost control." "No," Dagon said. "You found power." Max's voice cracked. "Then why do I feel sick?" Dagon led him to the side, out of view of the defeated gang. They sat on the curb together in silence. Finally, Dagon spoke. "There's a story I've never told you," he said, "about a boy I once trained. Fierce, talented, angry." Max looked at him. He was a prodigy. But every time he lost, he burned. Every insult, every failure, he carried it like firewood. And one day, he exploded. "What happened?" Max whispered. "He hurt someone who didn't deserve it. He won the fight, but lost everything else." Max's throat tightened. Dagon looked at him, eyes steady. "I see that boy in you, Max. I also see someone who stepped back, someone who held the line." Max's voice broke. "I wanted to hurt him." "And you could have," Dagon said. "But honor is not what you want to do. It's about what you choose to do." Max stared down the empty street, his fist finally unclenching. "I hate him," Max said, "for what he did." "I know," Dagon said. "But if you became him to beat him, then he wins again." Max looked at his hands. "Then how do I win?" Dagon smiled gently. "By building something that lasts and protecting it." Max exhaled. Long, heavy, quiet. "I want to learn how," he said. "You're already learning," Dagon replied. "The first lesson was survival. The second, restraint. The third," he nodded towards the burnt-out church, "rebuilding."
Dear future Emma, he could have broken him. You saw it, every muscle in Max's body screaming to strike. But he didn't. He held back, because his power isn't the weapon. Honor is. And today, Max chose it. Even when it burned in his chest, even when inside him begged for revenge, he could have ruled by fear. Instead, he chose respect. And that's why he's not just stranger than Rico. He's better. Because the fire didn't make him cruel. It made him clear. And that's the kind of warrior the world needs. Not the one who strikes hardest, the one who knows when not to. Don't ever forget what real strength looks like, Emma. Love, Emma.
Chapter 18, Brick by Brick. The burned church still smelled of smoke. The pews were gone, the altar gone. The walls were black with ash, windows shattered, floor scorched. But there were voices now, laughter, hammers, a radio playing soft gospel from someone's portable speaker. It had started the way most things do, small, quiet. One or two neighbors stopping by to sweep debris from the sidewalk. A couple of teenagers who watched Max at the tournament showed up with gloves and masks and asked, "Where should we start?" Max hadn't given orders. He'd just started clearing, and they had followed. By the end of the first week, the rubble had been moved into neat piles. A carpenter from 3 blocks away offered to build new benches, as long as someone keeps the coffee flowing. The corner grocer started donating bottled water. Someone spray painted "We Rise" across the back wall where the sanctuary once stood. It wasn't a church yet, but it was alive. Emma arrived mid-morning most days, her brown belt now permanently tied around her waist like a quiet declaration of who she was becoming. She spent afternoons with the younger kids, teaching them how to stretch, how to breathe, how to stand tall even when their knees were shaking. "They call her Little Sensei," one of the mothers said to Max one afternoon. He smiled. They're not wrong. One afternoon, Max stepped out of the reconstruction site and saw something that stopped him in his tracks. A group of neighborhood boys, ones that used to tag buildings and skip school, were painting a mural. It wasn't finished yet, but Max could already make it out. A rising sun, a silhouette in a gi, bow staff in hand, standing in front of a crumbling church being rebuilt behind him. It was him, but it wasn't just him. It was them. Later that day, Max sat on the church steps, a Gatorade bottle in one hand, sweat on his forehead. Emma dropped beside him, her shirt streaked with dirt, her braid wild. "I taught 6 kids today how to do front kicks," she said proudly. "Only 2 fell over." "That's a record," Max laughed. She bumped his shoulder. "We're getting good at this, you know." "At what?" "Leading." He was quiet. "I still feel like I'm just surviving, one thing at a time." She looked at him. "That is what leadership is. It's not speeches and spotlights. It's showing up when others don't know how." Max nodded, wiping his brow. "I keep thinking about how it started. That first night behind the church, watching you train through the window. I remember. I was a ghost," he said, "and now I'm not." Emma's voice was soft. "No, now you're the flame." The lot beside the church became a hub. Someone dropped off a basketball hoop one day. Another person brought benches made from old pallets. Max watched as a little girl taught her younger brother how to tie his shoes beside a flower bed someone had planted near the fence. He turned to Emma. "We should give it a name." "The lot?" "The space, the movement." Emma thought for a moment. "What about the honor lot?" Max smiled slowly. "I like that." That evening, as the sun dipped below the ruined steeple, the neighborhood gathered for the first official community dinner. Paper plates, folding tables. Pastor Mike, still sore but walking, gave a brief speech with tears in his eyes. Max didn't speak. He just served drinks, shook hands, picked up trash. As he looked out across the crowd, old men laughing, kids doing kata besides folding chairs, Emma braiding a young girl's hair while explaining balance. He felt something he hadn't felt in a long, long time. Peace.
Dear future Emma, they didn't need a fundraiser or a government grant or a rich outsider with a savior complex. They had Max, and they had each other. The church is still just bones and brick, but every day the skeleton grows stronger. And it's not because Max stood in front of them and gave them orders, it's because he stood in the fire and lived. He gave them something priceless. Proof. Proof that honor can be chosen, that you don't have to be perfect to matter, that your past doesn't have to define your future. You've watched it happen, one nail, one painted brick, one laugh at a time. And the best part, they're not building it for Max anymore. They're building it with him. The neighborhood has been through the storm. Now we're learning how to dance in the sun. Love, Emma.
Chapter 19. The way things could be. The sun felt different now. Warmer, softer, less like something to hide from, and more like something Max could finally stand beneath without flinching. He walked the block between the church and the dojo every morning, nodding to shop owners, waving to kids. A man he didn't know handed him a cup of coffee one day and said, "Just keep doing what you can, son." Max had smiled. "Trying," he said. But the truth was, he wasn't just trying anymore. He was becoming. The church rebuild had made real progress. A new frame was up. The lot beside it, now officially called the Honor Lot, had hosted its first youth tournament last weekend. 23 kids competed. No belts, no trophies, just movement, courage, and joy. Emma had judged the forms competition with a clipboard in one hand and 3 kids braiding her hair by the time it was all over. Max watched her from the edge of the lot, arms crossed, smiling so wide it hurt. That night, they walked home slowly. It had rained earlier, and everything smelled like clean pavement and blooming jasmine. The air was cool, but not cold. Emma walked with her hands in her hoodie pocket, shoulder bumping gently against his. "You ever think about what comes after this?" she asked. "After what?" "This chapter, this street, this neighborhood." He didn't answer at first. Then, "Sometimes." She looked at him. "I don't mean running away," he said. "I just wondered what else I could do, what else we could do." Emma's eyes glowed in the streetlight. "I think we could do anything." He stopped at the edge of the lot. The mural had grown. Now, it showed not just Max, but them. 2 silhouettes, side by side, a staff, a braid. Their backs to the viewer, facing a sunrise that spilled over a rebuilt church and a wide open field where kids trained in peace. Max stared at it, jaw tight. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," he whispered. "It's just more than I thought I'd ever have." Emma took his hand. "Then let's protect it." The next day, a letter came. A regional martial arts association had watched Max's tournament performance online. Someone from a nearby dojo had submitted his bow staff routine. They were offering him a scholarship, free training, travel stipends, a chance to compete across the state. It was everything he never dared to want. He brought the letter to Emma, hands shaking. "I don't know what to do," he said. Emma read it, then handed it back gently. "Do you want it?" "I don't know," Max said. "I don't want to leave." She hesitated. "Then maybe it's not about leaving." He looked at her. "Maybe it's about growing and showing everyone that us, this neighborhood, has something worth sending out into the world." He sat beside her on the church steps. "Would you come with me?" Emma blinked, startled. "You mean, like your coach?" He laughed. "No, as my partner, my person." She turned red, looked down. Max nudged her gently. "Too soon?" She shook her head. "No, just kind of perfect." That evening, they danced. Not planned, not fancy. There was music playing at the lot. Someone had brought a Bluetooth speaker and queued up a playlist of soul songs and classic hip-hop. Kids laughed in the background. The sunset poured gold over everything. Max reached for Emma's hand. She rolled her eyes, smiling. "You can't dance." "True," he said, "but you can, so maybe we balance out." They swayed awkwardly near the mural, shoes scraping against the concrete. She leaned into his chest. "I'm scared," she whispered. He kissed the top of her head. "Me too." "But for once," she added, "I'm more excited than afraid." He nodded, holding her tighter. "So am I." Later, they sat under the stars, the fire pit glowing low, her head resting on his lap. "Do you ever think," she asked, "that we're allowed to be happy?" Max looked at her. "Every night," he said, "right before I fall asleep." Emma smiled, eyes fluttering closed. Max watched the fire flicker in the reflection of the windows, listening to the quiet sounds of a neighborhood at peace. And in that moment, he believed it, that maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of the rest of everything.
Dear future Emma, he asked you to go with him, not to run, not to escape, to build, together. And you said yes, not with words, but with every breath you took, every step you chose, every time your hand found his without even thinking. Max makes you believe in more than survival, more than brokenness, more than the limits this world tries to place on you. And tonight, under a sky full of stars, with music drifting through the warm air and the scent of jasmine wrapping around you like promise, you believed it too. You believed in more. But something's coming, Emma. You can feel it. Like the wind before a storm. You don't know what it is yet, but you know this. Whatever it tries to take from you, it's already too late, because you've already found each other. And that's the kind of thing no fire, no storm, no darkness can ever touch. Never forget the feeling of this night, Emma. Hold it close. Love, Emma.
Chapter 20, The Last Lesson. The wooden floor of the dojo glowed gold in the late afternoon light. Emma twirled the bow staff in her hands, laughing as Max stumbled over his grip. "Wrong wrist," she said, stepping forward. "You keep twisting too far out." Max chuckled. "Maybe you're just too good." "Maybe," she teased. They circled each other slowly, their staffs raised. Outside, children's voices echoed in the street. The door of the dojo was open, letting in the breeze. Max's hoodie was tossed over a chair in the corner. Emma had a streak of chalk across her cheek. And for a moment, it was perfect. "You ever think we'll teach here together?" she asked, catching his staff with hers and sliding in close. "All the time. Little kids running drills, you yelling about discipline, me calming everything down after you scare them." Max grinned. "Sounds like heaven." Emma smiled, wide and soft and unguarded. Then, the sound of the door slamming open. Boots on hardwood. Voices. Low, sharp. Rico. Max stepped in front of Emma instinctively. The gang filled the doorway. Jaden, Tank, others Max didn't recognize. But it was Rico who held the silence. Rico who stepped forward, eyes wild, a shaking gun in his hand. "Look at you," he spat. "Little dojo king, little hero, got the girl, got the mural, got my neighborhood." Max didn't speak. Rico raised the gun, pointed it at Max's chest. "You took everything." Emma stepped closer, hand brushing against Max's. And that was it. That was the moment. Rico saw it. The way her eyes locked on Max. The way her body leaned into him. The love that couldn't be hidden. Couldn't be faked. Couldn't be his. Rico's face twisted, and he turned the gun towards her. "No," Max said, stepping forward. Rico's finger tightened. "No!" The shot rang out. Time fractured. Max moved faster than he ever had, than he ever could. He threw himself in front of her. The bullet struck. Max gasped, stumbled, fell. Emma screamed as he collapsed into her arms. Rico froze. For one terrible, suspended second, the world stood still. Then Tank grabbed Rico. "We gotta go." The gang fled, leaving the door swinging, leaving the blood, leaving Max. Emma was on her knees, holding him. "Stay with me," she sobbed. "Max, look at me." He blinked slowly, lips parted. "Hey," he whispered. "Don't talk," she said, pressing her hands against the wound. Just stay here. I'm calling for help." "No time," he murmured. "Emma." Her tears dripped onto his chest. "I'm here," she whispered. "I'm here. I love you, Max." He smiled. Even through the pain, even as the warmth drained from his limbs. "I know," he said, his hand reaching up, trembling, brushing her cheek. "You made me whole." "No, you made me whole," she cried. "You made this whole place matter." Max's breathing slowed. "I was nothing," he whispered. "But honor made me something." Emma's body shook with sobs. "You're everything." His fingers laced with hers. "We all leave something behind," he said. "Let honor be mine." His eyes fluttered. Emma held him tighter. "Don't go," she begged. "Please, Max, don't leave me." He looked at her one last time. "I'm not leaving," he whispered. "I'll live in everything we build." And then his hand went still. The dojo was silent again. The breeze still blew. But the boy who once watched from the shadows had become the light.
Dear Emma, he died in your arms. He died in your arms and you couldn't save him. You screamed and you screamed and you screamed, but no one could hear it. Not really, not the way it ripped through your soul. You held him, you begged him, you shook him, you loved him, and it still wasn't enough. You don't know how to move without him. You don't know how to breathe in the world that doesn't have Max in it. You are drowning in silence so loud it feels like it will crush you. But listen to me, Emma. He didn't die afraid. He didn't die angry. He died protecting. He died loving. He died with honor burning so bright around him that even death couldn't dim it. And you are the one who is carrying that fire now. You are the one who has to scream into the hearts of every kid who steps those dojo doors. Strength is not fist. Strength is sacrifice. Strength is love. Max didn't just change a broken neighborhood. He saved it. And when the world tried to crush us in silence, when it tried to smother what he built, we learned something the darkness will never understand. Even the smallest flame, even one boy's light, can burn down the night. And it will never ever go out. Not while you're still breathing. Not while his name still beats inside your heart. Never let them forget, Emma. Never. Love, Emma.
Chapter 21, Max's Place. The sky was gray that morning. Not stormy, not cold, just gray. Still, like the world was holding its breath. The honor lot was quiet when the first people began to arrive. Not with noise, but with presence. Silent footsteps, folded hands, dressed in black and denim and the colors of the neighborhood. Some held flowers. Others brought paintbrushes. One boy carried a single bow staff across his shoulders. By noon, the lot was full. Max's lot. The ground had been swept clean. A long wooden table stood near the rebuilt garden beds, now filled with blooming yellow flowers. A circle of chairs had been set in the grass, facing the edge of the church's foundation. A speaker cracked quietly as volunteers set up a mic. And beside it, small, simple, powerful, a hand-carved plaque nestled into a freshly painted flower bed, painted carefully in a child's handwriting, Max's place, so that we do not forget honor. Sensei Daigon stood in front of it now, eyes fixed not on the crowd, but on the plaque. He didn't speak right away. Didn't need to. The air was heavy with grief and love and something else. Gratitude. He stepped to the microphone. The crowd hushed. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady but deep with emotion. I have been teaching martial arts for over 30 years, he said. I've seen fighters become champions. I've seen students rise, fall, and rise again. He looked up at the crowd. But I have never seen anyone live honor more clearly than Max. A murmur of agreement moved through the group. Daigon's voice caught. Honor is not a title, not a belt, not even a reputation. It's a choice you make, especially when it costs you something. He turned, looking down at the plaque. Max didn't grow up in safety. He didn't grow up with comfort, but he grew into courage. He paused, breathing deeply. He chose love over fear, service over anger. And when the world tried to silence him, he spoke with action. He looked out at the children, the shopkeepers, the families, the old fighters, the young students, the mothers and fathers and mentors. Max didn't die for a fight. He didn't die for glory. He died to protect what we were building, to protect someone he loved, to protect the idea that this neighborhood could be more. Daigon's voice trembled, and in doing so, he became something no enemy could take from him. He placed a hand gently over his heart. A warrior in every sense of the word. The crowd was silent. Emma stood in the front, hands clutched to her chest, eyes locked on Daigon with tears streaming freely down her face. The sun broke through the clouds just then, casting warm light across the field. Daigon took one final breath, and then he stepped back from the mic and lowered his head. Emma stepped forward, placing her bow staff gently beside the plaque. And then, without a word, she bowed. Low, full, sacred. The neighborhood watched. And then, one by one, they bowed too. Old men with aching knees, children who barely understood, parents with toddlers, painters, teachers, shop owners, fighters. Every soul in that park bowed to a boy who gave his life for love, to a boy who taught them what honor really meant. And then there was stillness, like the world exhaled, like something in it healed.
Dear Max, I don't know how to start this. I don't even know how to breathe without you. I've been sitting here, staring at the page, shaking, broken, begging for the right words to come, but maybe there aren't any. Maybe love this big, this raw, this unstoppable doesn't fit into words. You're gone, and the world, It's still spinning. The kids are still laughing. The breeze still carries the smell of cut grass and chalk dust from the dojo floor. But I can't feel any of it. Not without you. You're not here, smiling, that half smile, your nervous hands fidgeting when you thought no one noticed. You're not here laughing at my terrible cooking. You're not here falling over during warm-ups or whispering about how one day we'd run this place together. You're not here, and it hurts. It hurts so much, I don't even know if I'll survive it. But Max, listen to me. I made a promise. I made the promise the night your blood soaked through my hands, the night your voice cracked and you whispered to me that honor was everything. I swore I would never forget, and I won't. I will never, ever let your name fade, and I will never let this neighborhood forget what you gave them, what you gave me. You were never just a boy from the streets. You were never just a fighter. You were the light we didn't know we needed. And now I carry it. I am the flame. I will teach every single child who steps onto our mats who you were. I will tell them the strength isn't in fist, it's in sacrifice. The courage isn't in shouting, it's in staying. That real love doesn't always get to stay forever, but when it is real, when it's true, it lives beyond everything else. You saved me, Max, before the fire, before the fight. You saved me the moment you believed in me. And now I will spend the rest of my life making sure the whole world knows who you were. Every bow I take will be for you. Every lesson I teach will carry your voice. Every time I whisper the word honor, it will be your face I see. I love you. I always love you. And I will never, ever let them forget. This is still your story, Max. And now, it's mine to tell. Forever yours, Emma.
Chapter 22, 10 years later. The flame he left behind. Is it true he fought all of them at once? A chorus of young voices rose from the circle, of children gathered in the sun-dappled grass. Did he really take on a whole gang? Was he faster than everybody? Did he really save the whole neighborhood? The blonde woman crouched near them, a playful, almost mischievous smile tugged at her lips. She couldn't have been more than in her late 20s, but there was a gravity in the way she moved, a strength in her eyes that made her seem older, unbreakable. The children leaned in, holding their breath, waiting. She rose slowly, her black belt catching the light, a simple knot around her waist, worn soft from years of training, teaching, living. Do you want to hear the truth? She asked. They all nodded, wide-eyed. Instead of answering, she turned towards the bench under the old oak tree, its roots tangled deep in the earth beside the rebuilt church. She reached down and pulled out a battered, leather-bound journal, edges frayed, pages worn thin from time and tears. She cradled it in both hands reverently. This, she said steadily, is the truth. The children gathered closer, silent now, feeling the weight of the moment. Emma sat down on the bench, smoothing her fingers across the journal's cover. This is my journal, she said softly. It's where I wrote the story of a boy named Max. She paused, her throat tightening. He didn't start out brave. He didn't have money or power or an army behind him. He didn't even have a family to catch him when he fell. She looked up, her eyes shining with a fierce, unstoppable love. But he had honor. A hush fell like a blanket over the park. That's what made him unforgettable. Not the trophies, not the fights, not the victories. It's the way he kept showing up, the way he chose to protect others, even when it cost him everything. She turned a page, fingertips lingering over a line she knew by heart. He gave everything he had to this neighborhood, to the dojo, to me. A tremor moved through her voice, but she pressed on. And when the time came, he gave even more. One boy raised his hand hesitantly. Is that when he saved you? Emma nodded, swallowing a lump in her throat. Yes, he stepped into the fire so someone else didn't have to. Another girl whispered, wasn't he scared? Emma closed the journal carefully, cradling it against her heart. He was terrified. She looked at each of them, her voice rising, fierce with passion. But he showed up anyway. That's what honor looks like. She stood then, stronger than the sorrow, stronger than the memories, stronger than the grief. One day, every one of you will face a moment, maybe not in a ring, maybe not on a street, but inside yourself. You'll have a choice. Protect yourself or stand for someone else. Hide or rise. She set the journal down carefully on the bench. And when that moment comes, remember Max. She pointed to her heart. Remember that honor isn't something you wear, it's something you live. The children rose, barefoot in the grass, their voices lit with something fierce and beautiful. Emma motioned towards the training ring just beyond the mural, a mural of Max, forever smiling, forever standing tall. Now, she said, let's train. They followed her, not out of fear, but out of love. And as Emma turned to lead them across the field Max once walked, she rested her hand briefly on the journal, whispered so soft the wind almost stole it. I'm still telling your story, Max. Every step, every breath, every bow. I am the flame you lit. And then she stepped forward, head high, heart blazing, because honor was no longer just a story. It was the life she lived. The fire never went out, Max. You carried it. We all did. We still are. And then she smiled, soft, fierce, and unbreakable, watching as hope danced again across the streets they saved. The end. But the story of honor never truly ends.